Welcome back after the first terminal examination. I hope that all of you performed well in the examination and are expecting that you will get good marks. Okay, today I shall take up the third chapter of civics, salient features of the Constitution. Okay, salient features of the Constitution, part 2. First of all, we shall talk about the meaning of the directive principles. The directive principles are the guidelines. Can anyone tell me from which constitution directive principles are taken? Directive principles are taken from the Constitution of Ireland. What is directive principles? Directive principles are the guidelines to be followed by the government in the governments of the country. Directive principles are the guidelines to be followed by the government in the governance of the country. Part 4th of the Constitution has the directive principles of state policy under Article 36 to 51. The directive principles are not a substitute for laws of the country. They are called directive principles because the government has to take them into consideration while making laws. These principles contain lofty ideas, high ideas, deep human thought, belief and knowledge. These principles are not found in any other constitution of the world except those of India and Ireland. I have already told you that the directive principles are taken from the Constitution of Ireland by the architect of our Constitution. Sources of directive principles. At the time of drafting the Constitution, its framers were inspired by 5 important sources. The architect of our Constitution, the architect of the Constitution of India were inspired by 5 important sources. What are those important sources? First one, the Constitution of Irish Republic, which contains the principles of social policy for the guidance of legislators. Second point, the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizens of Revolutionary France. And third principle, the ideas of Mahatma Gandhi. The fact that the directive principles also contain Gandhian principles is sufficient to prove that ideas of Mahatma Gandhi had influenced the framers of the Constitution. Fourth point, the Charter of Human Rights framed by the United Nations. And last and important point, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted by the United Nations when the Constituent Assembly was deliberating over the Indian Constitution. Okay. Importance of directive principles. In this section, in this part, we shall discuss the importance of directive principles of the Constitution. Like in the case of fundamental rights, there is a difference of opinion. There is a difference of opinion. Like in the case of fundamental rights, there is a difference of opinion regarding the importance of the directive principles of the state policy. The main difference of opinion surrounds their non-justifiable nature. Fundamental rights are justifiable. That is to say, you can move the court to get your rights. You can move the court. You can move the court to get your rights. Sometimes you see people talking that when two persons were at loggerheads, one of them said, I shall see you in the court. We got such kind of rights due to directive principles of the Constitution. That is to say, you can move the court to get your rights, but directive principles are not justiciable. Despite these limitations, the directive principles are very important. This importance stems from the following. First one, the directive principles are in the nature of a pledge made by the framers of the Constitution to the people of India. They provide a framework, political, social, and economic programs for a modern democratic state. And the second most important point, which the framers of our constitutions mentioned in the Constitution of India, is the directive principles give guidelines to the government. Directive principles are important because they give guidelines to the government to make laws and draft their policies according to these fundamental principles, which summarize the objectives of our Constitution. They provide an element of permanence in a democracy. They provide a measure to judge a government's performance. The directive principles direct government to move towards the goal of a welfare state. They reflect the ideas of justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity mentioned in the preamble. They enlighten and educate the people of what they can expect from the politicians to whom they vote to power. Sixth point, they provide a direction to courts in respect of safeguarding the rights of the citizens. Since public opinion backs the directive principles, the goal of establishing social and economic order is clearly laid out before the government. According to the 42nd Amendment in the Constitution of India in 1976, provides that if a law is made to give effect to any of the directive principles, it will not be declared unconstitutional even if it takes away any of the rights under Articles 14, 19, and 31. This provision is of great importance for the implementation of the directive principles. It also makes it clear that in case of any conflict between the directive principles and the fundamental rights, the farmer shall prevail. This is because the welfare of the people as a whole is of paramount importance over that of an of an individual. However, the directive principles are not enforceable by any court of law in the country. This is effect means that the citizens cannot move the court of law if the government fails to implement these directives. But on moral grounds, both the government and the courts have to take recognizance of these directives. Welfare state, a very important procedure mentioned in the Constitution of India. What is a welfare state? A welfare state is a state which seeks to ensure the maximum happiness of maximum number of people living within its territory. The Constitution of India seeks to establish India as a welfare state. The Constitution of India seeks to establish India as a welfare state. Although the words welfare are not especially mentioned in the Constitution, the aims and objectives of a welfare state are clearly pointed out in the directive principles of state policy. And these directives emphasize that the goal of the Indian polity is a welfare state, where the state has a positive duty to ensure to its citizens social, economic justice and dignity to the individual. Both the union and the state government have over the past 6 decades taken steps to implement directive principles which aim at establishing social and economic democracy, the basic goal of a welfare state. Our planning process or the 5-year plans are directed towards achieving this goal. Social equality and justice is an important part mentioned in the Constitution of India. The union and the state governments have been taking steps. Okay, the union and the state governments have been taking steps to implement the directive principles. The first point is the right to education, which you have studied in the previous chapter of the salient features of the Constitution part 1. The Right to Education Act has made it mandatory for every child between the ages of 6 to 12 to be provided free education in all government and government aided schools. The act also requires all private schools to preserve 25% of seats for the children belonging to economically weaker sections of the society as a part of the public-private partnership plan. Second, special scholarships are provided to socially and economically weaker sections of the society. There is a system of reservation of seats in jobs and in educational institutions for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Third point, one of the major objectives of 5-year plans is to focus on the welfare and progress of the weaker sections of the society. You should try to find out after independence when this 5-year plan was implemented. And in the first 5-year plan, what were the objectives of the state, central government? In the second, what were the objectives? Third 5-year plan, what were the objectives? You should try to find out the answer to these questions. And fourth, untouchability has been made an offense punishable by law. Economic welfare. Economic welfare, the government has abolished. The government has abolished Jamidari system and introduced the land reform program to do away with the old feudal social economic structure of rural India. Social economic structure of rural India. The, the government has abolished the Jamidari system and introduced the land reform. The government has abolished the Jamidari system and introduced the land reform program to do away with the old feudal social economic structure of rural India. Right to fair compensation and transparency in land acquisition, rehabilitation and resettlement bill 2013 was passed by the parliament in September 2013. In September 2013, this bill was passed in the parliament. In 2013, was passed by the parliament in September 2013. This act came into force from January 1st, 2014. The act aims to establish the law on land acquisition as well as the rehabilitation and resettlement of those directly affected by the land acquisition in India. The act provides for fair compensation to those whose land is taken away, transparency in the process of acquisition of land to set up factories or buildings, infrastructural projects, and assures rehabilitation of those affected. Those persons who were affected by the establishing of the factory, those persons were again given the opportunity to rehabilitate there, to establish them there by this act. The act has replaced the Land Acquisition Act 1894, a nearly 120 years old law enacted during British rule. Nationalization of banks, insurance companies, and some key industries have been done to ensure that the ownership of the material resources of the community are so distributed as to obtain best service of common good. In order to ensure just payment to workers and equal pay for equal work, the payment of wages is governed by the government, which has enacted legislation to the effect that the payment be made according to the Maximum Wages Act 1948 as amended from time to time. And the last point in this section, E, second last point in this section, the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. The Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana was launched on January 13, 2016. Under this scheme, farmers will have to pay a uniform premium of 2% for all Kharif crops and 1.5% for all Rabi crops. For annual commercial and horticultural crops, farmers will have to pay a premium of 5%. The remaining share of the premium will be borne equally by the center and the respective state government. Under PMFBY, Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, there is to be no upper limit on government subsidy, and even if balance premium is 90%, it will be borne by the government. The scheme also provides farm level assessment for localized calamities, including hailstorms, unseasonal rains, landslides, and inundation. Suppose that a farmer has sown his field, and when the time came for the harvesting, due to heavy rain, due to hailstorm, his crop was completely destroyed. So according to this Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, the farmer will get the compensation by the government. Under PMFBY, there is no upper limit. Okay. A social upliftment scheme called the Jan Dhan Yojana. I think that most of you know about this Jan Dhan Yojana. A social upliftment scheme called the Jan Dhan Yojana was announced by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi on August 15, 2014. Under the scheme, bank accounts have been opened for the poor. Each account has a life insurance cover of 30,000, aiding to 1 lakh accidental insurance benefit already available under the account. Okay, each account has a life insurance cover of 30,000, aiding to the 1 lakh accidental insurance benefit already available under the account. The account is accompanied with a RuPay enabled debit card. This scheme is aimed at improving the lives of millions of Indians poor by bringing them into the financial mainstream and freeing them from the clutches of money lenders while giving them the benefit of insurance cover. By January 30, 2016, over 20 crore bank accounts were opened and 3 lakh 108 billion were deposited under the scheme. The government has launched various programs such as Integrated Rural Development Program, which is known as IRDP, and Rural Landless Employment Guarantee Program, RLEGP, to help the poor. The Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act 2005 seeks to provide 100 days of guaranteed wage employment to rural households. The National Food Security Bill, 2013 was passed by the Parliament on September 12, 2013, and is called the National Food Security Act 2013. This act provides for food and nutritional security by ensuring access to adequate quantity of quality food at affordable prices to people to live a life with dignity. And for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, it gives the right to subsidize food grains at 67% of India's 1.2 billion people and penalty for non-compliance by public servants. The salient features of this act are the following. 70% of rural and 50% of the urban population entitled to 5 kilograms of food grains per person per month, wheat, rice, and coarse grains respectively. Second point, pregnant women and mothers entitled to nutritious meals and maternity benefit of at least 6,000 for 6 months. Central government will provide funds to state in case of short supply of food grains. The state governments will provide food security allowance to beneficiaries in case of non-supply of food grains. Public distribution system to be reformed. The eldest woman in the household, 18 years or above, will be the head of the household for the issue of ration card. There will be state and district levels redress mechanism, political, administrative, and legal matters. Panchayati Raj has been established in the remotest villages to promote the ideas of local self-government. In view of the constitutional directive, free legal aid has been provided to those people who themselves cannot engage lawyers. This has been done to ensure equal justice to all. In order to check the misuse of powers, there is now a complete separation of judiciary from the executive. Foreign policy, this is the last point. In order to promote international peace, in order to promote international peace and security, India is opposed to colonialism and racialism and has helped many countries to win their freedom. India supported the cause of South Africa against apartheid. India is law abiding, it respects international law, it has food for settlement of international issues by mutual understanding. And the last point, India holds the policy of complete disarmament and has been firm against all the attempts of some powerful countries for partial disarmament. I shall tell you the difference between the directive principles and the fundamental rights. Directive principles, they are provided in part 4th of the Constitution. Directive principles are provided in part 4th of the Constitution, but fundamental rights are provided in part 3rd of the Constitution. Directive principles are not justiciable or enforceable by any court of law, but fundamental rights are justiciable. The citizens can seek protection from a high court or Supreme Court. Fundamental rights are meant for the government to create certain privileges for the citizens. They are privileges in existence for the citizens to enjoy. Directive principles are mere directions to state to attain certain set objectives. But fundamental rights are certain kind of restrictions on the state. Directive principles aim to establish a welfare state, but fundamental rights aim to establish political democracy. Directive principle aim to establish a welfare state, but fundamental rights aim is to establish a political democracy. Fundamental rights scope is wider as they deal with wide range of subjects including international peace and security. But fundamental rights, the scope of fundamental right is limited as they are concerned with individuals' right. Before writing the answers to this question, before reading, I sincerely advise you to study the first chapter, the salient features of the Constitution, part first. Then this chapter will be more clear to you. Okay. Garima Pandey.
Good morning, sir.
Very good morning.
Sir, under foreign policy, what is racialism and colonialism?
Under foreign policy, racialism. Racialism means related to race, related to caste, and colonialism. In order to promote international peace and security, India is opposed to colonialism. When English came to India, when the British came to India, they came here as a merchant. They came here as a businessman. But after some time, they started making colonies here. Okay. And after some time, India became the colony of the British government. Okay. And their main purpose was to exploit the country. So in the foreign policy, in order to promote international peace and security, India is opposed to colonialism. Means India opposed colonialism. It respects the peace and security throughout the world, not throughout the country, but throughout the world. And it opposed that in other countries, there should be no colony. Okay, as the British established a colony in our country. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And on the economic policies, economic welfare, sir, after the last point, the government launched a various programs. What you have told, sir, it is not mentioned in the book.
Where?
Sir,
Hello?
on page number 142. Yes, sir.
Which program?
Sir, last program, ERDP program.
ERDP program, a lot of new things are added. Okay. Some I told you, which is not mentioned in the book. Okay. As the reservation is given here in the same book, just before economic welfare, reservation is given. There is a system of reservation of seats in jobs. Okay. 27% reservation given to the OBC and 23% reservations were given to SC/ST candidate. And last year the government gave 10% reservation to EWS. EWS is the economically weaker section of the society. Economically weaker section of the society was given also reservation. Okay, but here it is not mentioned. The few things which is not mentioned, I also tell you so that you should keep in your mind. Okay, and after the class, I tell you to see the videos which we send in the class groups. Clear? Hello? Pari Dalmia? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Garima?
Disconnected.
Sir,
and what is this disarmament? Disarmament. Disarmament.
Disarmament means not to use the arms. Arms means weapons. Disarmament. Okay. No use of weapons. If the weapons were used, then the policy of peace and security will be destroyed. If we shall use the weapon, then there will be peace. There will be no peace. A policy against disarmament. Disarmament. Disarmament means not to use arms, weapons. Okay, anything else?
No, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Listen, dear students, a few things I want to tell you. Try to read your questions, your chapters in the first terminal examination for the oral exams. Okay. The things which are given in the box in your book, I think that the clue of the chapters are given there. At the end of the chapters or in the beginning of the chapter, some points are given in the box in your book, in each and every chapter. So pay attention to those things which are given in the box. And short answer type questions which are given there. Read those questions and think. Okay. The pictures which are given there, see and try to identify. That will also help you to answer the questions in the oral examination. Okay. Objective questions which are given here from chapter 1 to the Gupta age, the age of Gupta, and first two chapters from civics. The best thing according to me is to read the short answer type questions. I think that 10 questions or 15 questions are given in the beginning. First read those objective questions, that will help you a lot. After reading those questions, read the things which are given in the box and try to understand the connection of the articles. Suppose that you are studying civics chapter, so try to find out the articles, and articles, try to know which article is used for which thing. Okay, so that will also help you to understand the content of the chapter. Don't try to memorize. Okay, read the things, try to understand the things. If your concept will be clear, you will be able to answer each and every question. Okay, now it is clear. Anything else if you want to ask? Anyone else? No one? If you want to ask anything, any doubt, you can ask. You don't have any doubt. Okay. So it is my sincere advice to all of you. Try to read the things which are given in the box. That will help you. Okay. And try to remember the terms which are given at the end of the chapter. Just before the exercise, some important terms are also given. Those terms will help you to answer the questions. Okay. Definitely those terms will help you to answer the questions. In the Indus Valley civilization, same thing, short answer type questions. And in the Vedic age, the Vedic period, short answer type questions will help you to answer the questions in the oral examination. Okay. Jainism and Buddhism, read very minutely the things which are given in bold letters. Okay. The things which are given in bold letters in the chapter, that will help you a lot. You should try to clear your concept about the Tripitak about Bardhaman Mahabir's and Buddha's teachings, and Eightfold Path, Four Noble Truths,